Good afternoon, everyone. It's Willowzilla, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're talking about Hurricane Sally and the impact it's going to have on the Louisiana, Mississippi coast, and another tropical update. Before I do get started with the video, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do enjoy the weather content that I do provide. Make sure to hit the like button. Let's see if we can get this video up to at least 10 likes. So here we're going to be looking at NOAA's or the NHE's areas of disturbances map. So you can see here is Hurricane Sally just off the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi. We have Hurricane Paulette, and then tropical or post remnants of Renee, and then we have tropical storms Teddy and Vicky here on the map as well. And here you can see that wave down off the African coast is now up to around a 40 to 60% chance of forming, as that wave in the Gulf is not projected to become much of anything else in the future. So let's start with Hurricane Sally, the most important thing right now in the tropics that could be having a tremendous impact on Louisiana. So let's get into these key messages. It is too early to determine where Sally's center will move on shore, given the uncertainty in the timing and location of Sally's northern turn near the central Gulf Coast. Users should not focus on the details of the official forecast track, since the NHE's average forecast error at 48 hours is about 80 miles. And dangerous storm surge, rainfall, and wind hazards will extend well away from the center. An extremely dangerous and life-threatening storm surge is expected for areas outside the southern Louisiana hurricane and storm damage risk reduction system from Port Fourchon, Louisiana to Alabama, Florida border. Where a storm surge warning is in effect, residents in these areas should follow any advice given by your local officials. Hurricane conditions are expected tonight within the hurricane warning area in southeastern Louisiana, and are expected by late Tuesday within the hurricane warning area along the Mississippi and Alabama coastline. Tropical storm conditions are likely to begin later today and this evening in these areas, and preparations should be rushed to completion. Life-threatening flash flooding is likely, as well as widespread minor to isolated major flooding on area rivers along and inland of the central Gulf Coast. Significant flash and urban flooding, as well as widespread minor to moderate river flooding, is likely across Mississippi and Alabama through the middle of the week. Flooding impacts are expected to spread farther across the southeast through this week. Sally could continue to produce flash flooding across Florida's peninsula and prolong existing minor river flooding across the west central Florida throughout today. So, that's a little bit of a summary slash recap. So basically, you could be experiencing some of these hurricane conditions if you are along the Louisiana coast. Major river flooding is expected with this storm, as we will get into the USA total rainfall here in a little bit. Storm surge warnings are in effect, so you need to be rushing your completions. If you haven't evacuated already, you need to be evacuating. Here is the NHC's current map. You can see it is expected to become a hurricane, which it already is. Now, will it strengthen? That's where it could become weird, because there is some shear, and with it's moving really slow, so we could have a couple areas of not so warm water, and that wind start picking up that colder water, which could kind of make the storm not be as powerful or as strong as it once was. You can see we have hurricane warnings all across the Louisiana coast on the southeastern side of things, and parts of Alabama and Mississippi. Now here is the arrival time of these winds. You can see pretty widespread wind range here. You can see middle of Mississippi and Alabama will be receiving these winds by Tuesday at 2 a.m. and then out towards the near the South Carolina border, you'll be receiving these winds, as it is a tropical depression around Wednesday in the early morning hours. Now here is the U.S. total rainfall. You can see we'll be looking anywhere from 15 to 20 inches of rain in this area just on the coast of Mississippi and Alabama. So if you are in the area, you need to be expecting some pretty significant flooding, as long as a very widespread area of about 6 to 10 inches of rain kind of towards the center there. And then other than that, we're just going to have 10 to 15 possible along the coast here as well. So if you are in the area that has 10 to 20 inches of possible rain, you need to be taking this seriously. That could be non-survivable rainfall. So you need to be listening to your higher officials and taking this storm very seriously. Now here is the areas of flooding possibilities. You can see we have a 50% high chance of flooding, as long with a 20% moderate range as well. On the here on the right side of the screen, you can see days 1 through 3. So you can see day 3 looks like to be the worst of flooding over a more broader area, but other than that, day 2 is when it is expected to make landfall. So here on the storm surge map, we are expecting the same amount of storm surge from yesterday, 7 to around 11 feet of storm surge along Lake Bourne. So if you were in that area, that is expected to where the heavier rains, as well as where the low pressure could be hitting. That could be another area of significant storm surge that could cause multiple dozen possible damages to houses, boats, stuff like that. Here's a little bit of a closer up here on the wind field. You can see it's a pretty big wind field. So this wind field is where all the hurricane winds are being felt or are being sustained. So it's a pretty big area of wind. So you can see a little bit of a closer view on the warnings as well. Now let's look at some intensity guides and some track models. So most of the models are very consistent. You're in about 24 to 48 hours of it making contact with land. And then here they are projecting it to kind of have a right-hand turn heading towards the South Carolina coast. And here on the intensity guides, you can see most of it has it being a Category 2, possibly a Category 3. Other than that, have it falling off pretty quickly in about 24 to 36 hours. Now let's look at some satellite imagery. You can see a very heavy area of convection right here in the center, and then parts of it down towards the south here as well. So now there is some shear kind of up towards the northeastern part of this storm. We'll get into that here in a little bit, so make sure to stick around for that. Now here on the wide view, you can see a pretty pronounced area of deep convection, really just kind of sitting there as we saw on that previous slide. And then here on the true color, no significant eye yet. But if I was to make a prediction, I'd say the eye is probably going to be somewhere right in here. So we'll have to be keeping our eyes to see when that eye is going to form. Here are the current stats. You can see Hurricane Sally's pressure is at 987 millibars. Winds are at 85 knots to 100 miles an hour. Current location 28.8 north, 87.4 west. And its current movement is at west-northwest at 5 knots or at 6 miles per hour. Now here's my forecast. I have it being a Category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane at landfall with winds at around 111 to 115 miles per hour with pressure down at 980. And then at reaching tropical storm status in about 60 hours. With pressure at 990 millibars and 60 mile per hour winds, and then having it down to a tropical depression right as it kind of goes off the Carolina coast to where I think it will become just an area of broad low pressure. Now here's my impact forecast. So all these impact forecasts are going to be when it makes landfall. So green meaning tropical depression conditions, likely that could just be meaning with winds. They probably have already experienced this. And then the very big area of hurricane conditions possible with the most intense winds and rain as well, and then tropical storm conditions are also possible, kind of to the both sides of this area, where I think you could be receiving winds possibly, up to maybe a very intense tropical storm type winds, maybe possibly a low end hurricane force winds. Let's switch our focuses now to Hurricane Paulette, which is expected to be a major hurricane, but now it's going to be a fish storm as they are projecting. So key messages here as it does pass over Bermuda. The eye of Paulette will gradually move away from Bermuda today. However, hurricane and tropical storm conditions, storm surge, and very heavy rainfall will likely continue into this afternoon. Swells produced by Paulette are affecting portions of the Leeward Islands, the Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, Bermuda, and the east coast of the United States. These swells could cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. Here you can see the kind of close-up map. You can see you have tropical storm warning still in effect for the island of Bermuda, and then it has it reaching a major hurricane status here up until around Tuesday afternoon, possibly into Wednesday morning, and then it falling apart into a tropical storm here around Friday. Now look at this wind field. You can see it's a pretty nice circular wind field. Hurricane force winds are still being felt kind of in the center of the storm, and then tropical storm force winds as well are being felt. Maybe Bermuda, you're still kind of receiving the outer banks of this. Maybe you're still receiving some of those tropical storm force winds. So if you're in the area, this storm is not over until, probably for a couple more hours, and then, you're all clear to kind of head back towards your island and your home. Here on satellite imagery, you can see an eye really kind of starting to form kind of in the center there, and then we do have an area of convection starting to form, possible right here, but that's been kind of falling apart. No real deep convection with the storm, so you can see the island of Bermuda still sitting right in here, so it's still receiving some of those outer banks. And then here on the water vapor side of things, you can clearly see that eye right in here, right there, and then areas of convection that we did see on the previous slide kind of starting to fire off right in there towards the eye, which is most common with the hurricanes. And then here on the true color, or what it looks like if you're looking down from outer space, you can see that eye really still kind of sitting there. But other than that, there's not much else going with this storm. It is expected to intensify. So I'm not going to have a forecast out for the storm just because it's not going to be hitting much of any more land. So we're going to have to be looking at the NHC to see how fast and then how quickly this storm will intensify, and be checking out the models. Here's the intensity, guys. You can see this, most of the models have it being a Category 3. Maybe some of the models have it reaching Cat 4 here, just barely south of Category 4 status with that model. And then it has a rapidly falling apart here in about 36 to around 60 hours. And then here on the model, guys, you can see in about 72 hours, it is expected to take a hard right-hand turn and then kind of dissipate here in about 160 hours. Most of the models are all very conclusive of it going straight, and then it's just going to be a matter of when does this storm make a right-hand turn. Here are the current stats. You can see pressure's down to 965 millibars, winds are at 85 knots over 100 miles an hour. Current location's at 34.5 north, 63.8 west, and it's currently moving north-northeast at 13 knots or at 15 miles per hour. So now we're going to look at Tropical Storm Teddy, which is also expected to be a major hurricane and could possibly have Bermuda in its crosshairs once again. It's still a tropical storm at this time, so we're going to be keeping our eyes very, very closely on the model to see if this could be possibly hitting Bermuda, or if it continues on its northwestern track, could it be possibly hitting the United States. But with these travel currents or track models, it has it kind of all turning right, as most of these tropical storms have been doing lately. And then here on the closer, you can kind of see that wind field there. It's not very big right now, but we're going to be keeping our eyes. It is expected to rapidly intensify here, so we're going to be keeping our eyes again on the models. You can see some convection really starting really fire up right in here, as that could be that area of low pressure as well. And then we do have a couple of areas off towards the western side of the storm that could kind of start to intensify to make that side of the storm kind of stronger as well. Here on the water vapor, we can clearly see convection really start to fire off towards the western side of the storm, in a little bit right in here as well, where that convection was that we just saw. And then here on the true color, you can see it is starting to turn to night, so it's going to be a little bit harder to see these storms clearly. But you can see convection starting to fire off right there on the last frames, and as well kind of towards in the middle of that storm. So let's look at some sea surface temperatures as well. So you can see down here where Hurricane Sally, as you can see, the warmer waters are really kind of starting to fall apart. As of here on the western side of the Gulf Coast, or the Gulf of Mexico, we do have upper 80s, and then here towards Bermuda we have around 84 degrees Fahrenheit in waters, and then towards the Leeward Islands mid to upper 80s. Here's a little bit of a wider view of how warm the Atlantic is. So you know, this has been very, very normal, where the Atlantic has been above average in temperature. And then you can see we do have some deeper parts here starting to form in the Caribbean and parts of the Gulf that are really starting to heat up. So that could be concerning if a storm does kind of go through this area, as we could see maybe, you know, maybe another Hurricane Laura situation where it does go through there and it rapidly intensifies. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on that area to see how warm those waters will get. Now here's the shear. You can see there's some definite shear above New Orleans that could be causing this storm to fall apart. We're going to see how intense that shear gets, and if it will be causing any significant impact on the hurricane that's about to hit in that area. Here you can see the atmospheric moisture. You can see very moist areas where the hurricane is right there, and then parts of the Texas-Mexican coast, also some very moist waters. You can see another patch of very moist waters above Bermuda. And then here on the Saharan air dust, you can see the Saharan air dust, not much going on right now other than just a little patch kind of where Tropical Storm Teddy is right now, and then a little area kind of surrounding Hurricane Paulette, but nothing across the Gulf of Mexico or affecting the Gulf at all. That's going to do it for the video, you guys. Hopefully you all did enjoy. If you did, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. I'm going to turn on those notification bell icons. Make sure to hit that like button and share with your family and friends, and I will be seeing you in tomorrow's video.